I'm going to be dragged for this. I know it. I just can't. I'm trying to articulate this in the way that is as accurate to my actual thoughts about this as possible. Kanye. So I think Lex Friedman was the person to the drinking bros or whatever that was. Or the whatever that thing that he did, that 3-4 hour podcast. I listened to the whole thing. I found it on a different channel that somebody had pirated it. It was a little bit aggressive and it was hard to listen to, and there was a lot going on. That was hard. Now Lex Friedman, on the other hand, Jewish man, very smart guy, good interviewer, very like a heartfelt guy. Lex has got like a heartfelt vibe. I really like it. This interview, this is the person that need to be having this conversation. I want to just like put some things out there before I even comment on this, because I tried to comment on this with some objectivity. I have zero issues with Jewish people. Okay. The Jewish faith, in my opinion, of like the Judeo-Christian, like the whole bundle of like that group of those religions, I think that Judaism is actually the most interesting, and it kind of is like intriguing to me. I have respect for that belief more than I do Christianity. Just putting that out there. That being said, I don't think that any group, if you're going to be in a group, if we're gonna see the world in a way of groups, right? White people, black people, Christians, Muslims, Jews. If we're gonna look at that way, we're gonna look at the world that way, which we are, right? From all sides of the political spectrum, we can't get enough of that. We gotta look at this thing and be like, hey, man, like this is. We got to be able to treat each other with some kind of equality. Be critical of this type. You've got to be able to criticize. Now, the way Kanye is doing it, not well, not handling himself well here, not articulating himself well. For somebody who's made his life on saying words the right way, at the right speed, in the right way, in the right cadence, and all this other shit in the right order, the way he's handling himself in this situation is not good. I'm not his doctor. I don't know what his mental situation is. I have not diagnosed him, and I'm not going to pretend that I can, because I can't. I don't know. Okay, that's not my role. Anybody who says they are doing that, that's not his doctor, right? And his doctor, I think, would be breaking all kinds of laws by doing that, is full of shit. You don't know what his deal is, right? I don't give a shit what Kim Kardashian says. I don't give a shit what Pete Davidson says. I don't give a shit what angry person on Twitter says. Let's look at this thing, because Kanye has seen a lot more of the reality of the world in a different way than you have, right? He's been poor. He's made it. He's had the come up. He's been a mega celebrity. He's a billionaire. He's seen the dark underbelly of society in a way that most of us have not engaged with, which might make you a little crazy, right? On top of being a little crazy already. Now, his views when it comes to people, here's the thing. A lot of people are saying, well, Kanye, it's anti-Semitic. Like you hear that, anti-Semitic. It's like, it's the same thing as being like, it's racist, what he's basically being called, right? But racist against Jewish folks. And a lot of things he's saying are pretty anti-Semitic in a way, right? Now, is he calling for violence? No. Is he frustrated? Clearly. Is he justified in his frustration? That's the challenging question. If we really want to be objective about this. Now, if you want to get your emotions all caught up in this and you want to get your panties tangled in a bunch, that's fine. I understand. If you're a Jewish person who like feels freaked out and stressed out and angry at this, that is 1000% a justifiable way of going about. I can totally see that. That being said, my role in this isn't to kowtow to any one belief system, any one race, anything, right? Any political party, any social media company, or Kanye himself. But what I think is interesting, the most interesting thing to do, is to try to understand where all this is coming from. What's his deal? Why is this happening? Where's the frustration? Where's the pain? Where's the hurt? Is there any truth in what he has to say? Now, clearly, I don't think it's part of the overall Judaism agenda to take over the world or whatever, but I can see how, right, if we're being generous here, one, I can see how people would be really outraged by this, obviously. And I can see how black folks and Native American folks who get laughed out of the room when they talk about reparations would be frustrated. So let's think about oppressed populations. You have Native Americans who got completely genocided, right, in westward expansion, which is funny because Candace Owens doesn't like want to acknowledge that that's like reality. Ben Shapiro kind of does. And there's weird, like I'm looking on the conservatives because they're like, they're head spinning right now. Like, they don't know what the to do. It's crazy. Like the people at the Daily Wire don't know what the to do right now. And they got nothing really. They got reservations. They got their whole thing. They did their thing. They got black folks in this country. They still live in like, there's a systemic issues, whether you want to call it racism or not, whatever I would call it, it's racist in the way that some of these laws that are still on the books are racist, right? Like marijuana possession being illegal is racist. It was racist when that being a Schedule I drug was racist in the way that Nixon put that thing together, right? The way Reagan approached that by putting cocaine, not a conspiracy, fact, putting cocaine, turning into crack cocaine into black communities. Ronald Reagan, that guy, that was racist, right? That has impacts to today. Jim Crow laws still have systemic impacts in our communities today, right? And I don't say black communities, I say our communities because we're all one people. If you don't believe that, we have another disagreement, okay? So Native Americans get on reservations, murder rates are through the roof, drug rates are high, kidnapping's high, poverty is out of the control. No one gives a Black communities, we just accept that they're more violent. There's fathers running the home. People don't have any money. Gangs run around. And it's like, and then liberals will be like, yeah, it's not happening. And then conservatives will be like, black on black crime, you know? And it's like, it's insane. The whole thing is heavy and insane. So you look at this and it's like, okay, but then you get laughed out of the room and say, hey, if I said, hey, you know what? Actually, Oklahoma belongs to Native Americans now. And I would say, hey, you know what? After all of this, instead of, we didn't give the black folks after slavery 40 acres and a mule. If I could go back and change one thing about American history, I would have given the former slaves their 40 acres and their mule. And you know what that would have turned into? Generational wealth for black folks who have never had the opportunity to really have that and never had the time. They'll say, well, Connor, their slavery's been over for blah, blah, blah. And Jim Crow ended in 1960, whatever. It's like, no, generational wealth happens over time, right? Talk about the Waltons. When do they start making their money? Like if it goes back, old money is old as black folks never had a chance. Black Wall Street got burned to the ground over false accusations of like looking at a white woman the wrong way, right? That was real old money being made by black folks. They would have had a downstream effect going forward. Black folks, when they owned land, oftentimes got it taken away. The opportunity for black folks to create generational wealth in this country has been hamstrung over and over again. And these folks get laughed out of the room when they talk about reparations, right? So if I said now Native Americans, same deal. Oklahoma now belongs to Native Americans. You guys do with it what you want. And I say maybe North and South Carolina belong to black folks now. It's a black state. It's just Carolina. And you may say, hey, Connor, well, people live in Oklahoma that aren't Native American, and white people live in North and South Carolina. I say, yeah. And people lived where Israel is now before Israel was there. But after World War II, Jews got a country and are treated quite different in the United States, particularly, which, by the way, wasn't the one that perpetuated that genocide. For the most part, had no idea it was even going on until it was discovered when the war was turned. So you can look at that and be very generous to Kanye, which I know is hard to do for people who get triggered by this, and say, I maybe can understand why black folks might have an issue looking at the way they're treated versus the way that they see Jewish folks treated in the United States or in general. Any Jewish person, I think you have one Jewish grandparent, you can go have citizenship in Israel. And you may think, wow, there must be like a bunch of land in Israel where people can just, you can just go, whatever. It's like, no, people lived there before. And now they, it may or may not be apartheid, but also Israel thinks that they, and this Israel lobby, right, which de facto Jewish folks think they have the right to infringe upon our First Amendment with these anti-BDS laws. So you may have to swear an oath to not support boycotting Israel to get a job as a teacher at a university because of what the Israel lobby has done. Now, you don't see a lot of conservatives speaking up about that infringement on free speech, which is where you may get into, hey, maybe some of these guys, some of these Christians are Christian Zionists, right? Which is very interesting. You say, well, Zionism is a dog whistle for anti-Semitism. That's all my qualifiers, right? Generally speaking, I think ethno-states are kind of a bad idea. I think it's a slippery slope, generally speaking. But if we're going to keep all things being equal, there's atrocities that happen in our nation's history. And if we want to hold all atrocities being equal, all genocides, all tragedies and that at that scale being equal, then let's give Oklahoma at least, maybe Montana, half of Montana, I don't know, to Native Americans, like a Native American Israel. Maybe we can give South and North Carolina to all black folks. And it seems like we're going to get into some of the, I think we just get into the Kanye West thing. But I think what I'm saying here is I could see where there would be some frustration, especially as an artist. So let's get into it.
Now what I'm calling for the industry is I'm calling the industry out and saying like, hey, it just so happens that there's been times where I had my lawyer was Jewish, my regulator was Jewish, but like 8 people that basically would collude and talk without me were in groups saying, okay, this is what the tour is going to be. This is his next house. And they were making all these decisions and they're making all this money. And at the end, I was like, I ended my tour and I don't have the money. And it just so happens that that's the case, that what they were. But what I'm saying is, if everyone can say, hey, you can't point out this fact, or we're going to say you're anti-Semitic and we're going to call you Hitler, I feel that there has to be at least 1% of safeguarding the ability to screw the artist based on saying it's anti-Semitic by pointing out that they just so happen to all be Jewish. And I don't think that's anti-Semitism. I just think that's, hey, this is another thing. Like, okay, the Kardashians, when you hear that, do you think male or do you think female? You think female. You get what I'm saying? You think this is the realities. This is why rap works, right? They're going to make an anti-women thing in a second, right? And it's going to say, well, if you point out that these 6 women are having a meeting on where the Christmas party is, and none of the ball players or rappers that they have babies with have any say-so that Christmas happened at Courtney's house all 8 years when I was there, and it never happened at anyone else's black family house, right? If I'm the one that pointed it out, they just don't have, they don't have their, oh, you're anti-Semitic word to say, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, but
because this is the way it runs and this is the way we want to do it.
If you say that women are silencing the black voice, yes, you're going to get the same response. But especially if it historically resonates.
What about the fact that it's true?
When you talk in groups, that breeds hate. When you talk about individuals, it solves problems. You're in engineering.
Okay, but this is something I pointed out on Pierce. I said, if a black person gets pulled over with a car and it's 3 other people in the car, they're also going to jail. They're not going to single them out. They're going to say, you guys are all in collusion. I just described collusion 5 times in this interview. And you keep on going back to this is like 1930. This is like this. This is like that. What I'm saying is, look, I want to work with you as an engineer to free my people. Can we start as a being with engineer opportunities right here? Yes. I am sorry to the people who had to be hurt and affected by that. Now we are here and I'm looking to solve it. But what happens is every time, if I talk to any of these business people one by one, because mind you, I didn't get to the tweet by not having a conversation. I had the conversations beforehand before I got to the tweet. Now we're going to take it to the stage. Now we're on the world stage, right? And you saw Ari Emanuel do exactly the kind of thing that I was saying had been done behind closed doors. Now he's doing it in open doors. They told Candace Owens I couldn't be on the Daily Wire. Like, you can't even
think about that. They told Candace Owens that he can't be on the Daily Wire. Now, I want to see Shapiro have this conversation. I would love to see that. And you're hearing like this isn't easily sound, but like cut up. So I'm just like playing more of the full thing here. But they told him that, right? So let's keep going.
Explain yourself. And we don't care how you got to that point either. And that's fucked up.
They told Candace you can't be on Daily Wire.
It's not even about, yes, she did. That's what they said. And you know what? And you can have my voice raised or lower. I'm going to do it lower, right? Because what's happening to me I put it in your words, the media is saying, not only can you not explain yourself, we don't care how you got to that point. You need to apologize. And you can't explain, and that's the end of the story. So just apologize so we can have Mel Gibson do some more films. It's exactly what Ari Emanuel was saying. No one is looking to change the problem that led so many people to that same level of frustration. And I just so happen to be the one that's not going to back up on it until this changes. Because you know what? I'm sorry I had a sleepy text. I'm sorry I wrote. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry that I put that I was 5'12" or 5'11".
I will leave that alone there. But here's what he's saying, that the only way out of this for him is to apologize, sweep it under the rug, move on. but it doesn't address the frustration that got him and other people to the point. And there's a lot of people that agree with him, guys. Let's just put this out there. This is why it matters. It's why it matters to break down white supremacy, and why it matters to just stay calm and look at this stuff and think through it. What he's saying is there's no one addressing the frustration. Now, here's the thing. He said that he had a Jewish lawyer, a Jewish record label, Jewish, all these folks around him, right? They were all Jewish. And what Lex is saying, justifiably, is like you should treat all those like individuals. Even if he would have been like, this person f***ed me, this person f***ed me, that person, this person, and they were all Jewish, he would still be called Hitler, anti-Semite, whatever, right? Which I think is inappropriate, right? Because there is something to be said for, like, here's what I think. And you see this in what he's going for here. And do I think he's going about it the right way? Absolutely not. Of course not. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is, it seems like, and I agree with him on this point, right, is that he thinks that black entertainers, black performers, black talent out there in the world, that money, that status, that growth, that should stay in the black community. And I agree with that. I think if you are a record label that is representing a bunch of rappers, the representation should probably be black. And that may be, hey, that's not the most, I don't care. I don't call it affirmative act. Call it whatever the you want to call it. I think that money should stay in the black community. But that's not the way it works. And we know that artists have been exploited. He said this on the drinking, whatever, the other podcast, was like, you have the situation where you got all these people, nickel and diamond, and taking a little bit, sucking somebody dry, and then Stevie Wonder's kids got to get a job, right? Should that ever be the case? But who owns the library? Who owns this? Like, these record labels been f***ing people over for so long, artists over. And it takes somebody that's a little bit crazy, and with the amount of leverage that he has, that Kanye has, however many, $11 billion, whatever he has, right? Or just say something. Somebody who's smaller, who still relies on that record label, that system, can't say shit. So we know that's unjust. And we know that money gets sucked out of the black community from black entertainers and goes elsewhere, right? And yeah, like he said, it just so happens that these group of people all seem to be Jewish. So he projects that onto the Jewish people. Do I think that's appropriate? No. But what I do see is that within Judaism and the Jewish culture, it seems to me, from the outside looking in, that it's very tight-knit, right? Like, for example, a lot of Jewish moms, it seems, from what I've seen, the stereotype, of course, but like want their sons and daughters to marry a nice Jewish boy or girl, right? Marry a nice Jewish boy. You see that a lot. It's like a trope. Now imagine my mom being like, find a nice white girl to date. You know what I mean? like a nice white Christian girl that fits with our, it's like, what? That'd be weird, right? And I think there's something to be said for that. Like, the Jewish community is very tight knit, and that comes from, it seems, centuries of being persecuted as a mechanism for safety. And I think that actually is one of the beautiful things about the Jewish community. But just like everything else, there's going to be criticism brought because of that, right? Where it feels like collusion, or it feels like leaving people out, or bypassing certain people that may be more qualified because they're not Jewish, right? And that tight-knitness ends up, whenever you're in a situation where, yeah, in the 40s, in Germany, in Europe, that was a scary time to be Jewish. But in my lifetime, and since then, what I've seen from the Jewish community is nothing but thriving success. Not that they should be punished for that. But when you look at all the major record labels, all the media outlets, all these companies are owned by Jewish folks, that makes me raise my eyebrows a little bit. And that's not because they're Jewish. It's because they're of one kind of belief system, right? So if it was all Christians, I'd be like, raise my eyebrows a little bit. If it was all black folks, if it's all white folks, like all these things, if it was all of one type of something, I'm gonna be like, what the f-? Like I said, has nothing to do with Judaism. It has to do with like homogenous groups of people with that much power. But then also, if you were to criticize these people, this group of powerful people, and that's not all Jewish people, I know, I'm gonna be dragged for this. I know it. I just can't. I'm trying to articulate this in the way that is as accurate to my actual thoughts about this as possible. If you can't criticize, can we accept the fact here? I'm struggling here, but if you can accept the fact here that there are several powerful Jewish folks that are living in, that have a lot of say in how things go in this country. We all agree to that. Okay. Being curious about that and asking questions about that, not in the way that Kanye's doing it, but being curious about that and asking questions about that is not anti-Semitic. In the same way that I criticize and am concerned at the amount of leverage that Christians have on our federal government, right? Especially evangelical Christians. We have to always kowtow to them, even with like Obama had to have Biden to kind of make those people feel comfortable. Trump had Pence to make those people feel comfortable. It's like we always have to kowtow to evangelical heads. I don't like doing that, right? I don't think it's appropriate. And we have to cuck to Israel too for some goddamn reason, right? That they have a higher standard of living than we do, but we have to fund their Iron Dome. You know, and Ben Shapiro will defend that as a conservative, which is odd to me that several $1 billion a year going to Israel makes sense to you. He's like, well, that's because we're funding defensive weapons, because if we didn't fund their defensive weapons, they would then use offensive weapons. So what we're doing is bribing Israel with the Iron Dome that we pay for with our taxpayer dollars. We're bribing Israel to not do war crimes. That's the defense, right? Now, for me asking that question as a non-Jew, I will be called anti-Semitic. If you're Katie Halper and you say something about apartheid Israel, you're called a self-hating Jew. So when these words get used so much for asking valid questions, they lose their meaning. In the same way that calling everyone racist makes no one racist, right? What makes it waters down that term to where it doesn't mean what you want it to mean, and it loses its fervor. So we got to keep this stuff in mind. Can we ask those kind of questions without being called all kinds of crazy ass names? And can we get to the real root of what Kanye's frustration is and why at the free speech absolutist platform Daily Wire would they not allow Kanye to come on? That's a real question, right? And I've had this thought about Daily Wire before, because it really happened when they had their whole Harry's Razor thing. They came out with like Harry's Razor dropped them because they didn't really agree with their beliefs. And then they came out with their own razor, which they didn't even innovate, like make a better razor. This is the same shitty product, which Harry's razors are shitty products. They didn't say, hey, here's a better razor for X, Y, and Z reason. It's just like, here's a company that agrees with your biases, so you should buy our razor instead of that razor. It's still shit. You just repackage the same shit, which I thought was so dumb and a wasted opportunity. But then I thought, well, okay, so if a company should only make financial decisions based on finances and not about beliefs, then in that case, if I say, hey, Daily Wire, I want you to bring my show on to your network, it's going to make you money. It's going to make me money. We're both going to financially benefit from that. Caveat being, I get to say what I think, feel, and believe. Right? I get to do my thing, but I get to work. I'm an employee of the Daily Wire, but I get to say my beliefs and do my thing. That means being pro-choice, means being relatively, pro-Second Amendment, whatever it is. These things that I care about and try to have a rational mind about. I want to do that, but I'm going to do it at Daily Wire. Politically Homeless is now a Daily Wire show. I would do that. But it doesn't matter that they would make money, that it would be good for their network, right? That having a dissenting voice might actually show a little bit more integrity on their part. They wouldn't do that because of ideology. They do not want a platform and a voice that rationally articulates ideas that they disagree with, because they couldn't then straw man constantly. So they are doing the exact same thing that they're accusing Harry's Razors of doing, because it's not about finances, it's not about content quality, it's about ideology. We see right now the hypocrisy of the Daily Wire through that little hypothetical and this with Kanye, when it's like, well, hey, people have ideas. Are you going to be the thought police? Or is the answer to that more ideas and an actual conversation, which you've been endorsing for ever, but only when it's convenient? So silencing Ben Shapiro out of college because people don't want to see him and the radical left gets all mad, that's one thing. But having Kanye West on to have a challenging conversation, I don't know, something worth thinking about. Now, moving on to the next segment we're going to talk about here. We're going in it pretty long, longer than I thought we were going to.
But the baby doesn't have it. So someone with the knowledge then feeds the baby the water. But it's important that those with the knowledge teach the baby how to find the water themselves. And the business people that I've been dealing with have been keeping the baby sick by not sharing the information and the knowledge within inside of those contracts. My people are sick. If I load up Apple Music right now and I play the top songs in the rap chart, I would tell you my people are sick. If I go to the restaurants and opportunity zones and we look at the calorie rating and the cholesterol, I will tell you that my people are sick. if we look at the obesity rate, if you go to just a restaurant somewhere in Middle America, Denny's or something. I went to Denny's the other day. You will see that my people are sick, and my people meaning all people, right? But Black people are very influential to all people. So, right, if the media picks a overweight Black woman and says this is body goals, then the media are influencing my people to stay sick. And it just so happens that night, I was so frustrated after 20 years that I had to call it out in one tweet that now, even if I say, hey, okay, I was frustrated for these reasons, now it's not good enough. You've literally tried to make me re-apologize 10 times in this meeting, re-say this, re-say that, but it doesn't change the fact that my people are sick, and I'm the only person in my position that will say that my people are sick. Today, not 30 years ago, not 60 years, my people are sick today. 50% of my people's deaths are abortion today. My people don't have the opportunities today. Even to the point that, because if JP Morgan had been nice to me and if Alex Klein, a STEM player, had been fair to me, different things, then I wouldn't even point it out that we don't have any Black, we have 2 Black engineers. So I have to have a responsibility, obviously to all people, but specifically to my tribe, because tribes move. You know, tribalism is real with Black people. To separate the brightest from the tribe, or to separate the leaders, it is factual that the CIA removed the leaders from the Black community, put crack in the communities, put guns in the communities, and locked up all the leaders.
That's absolutely 100% true what you just said there. Right? I hear that. Right? Hear that. He's talking about his DEFCON 3 tweet. Right? That's the only kind of reference to the Jews or Jew media or any of that kind of stuff in this. But hear what he's saying. Right? Now, understand that he's probably bipolar and manic. But listen, this is a better representation, in my opinion, of where it's coming from. Do we need to be generous? He's a celebrity. No one's going to give him sympathy. We don't need sympathy here, but we need to understand if there's something here that's worth listening to.
And called them gang leaders, right? Locked up all the leaders, locked up all the fathers. Now, 72% of Black mothers are raising children by themselves. This is an agenda like a Tuskegee experiment set on my people, right? And what I'm calling out for the Black people in entertainment is, what are we doing? We have to collude. And if we don't collude, because even if I said, hey, I'd like to make a company that's all Black, right? Is that okay for me to say? Is that okay for me to say? Or is that anti-Semitic? See, if I hadn't crossed the line so far, then that would have sounded anti-Semitic. Now I've stretched a bit, so now we can go to, okay, let's make an all Black company. But that would have been anti-Semitic. Just that concept, because you could word that in a different way that would sound anti-Semitic.
I don't know, man. I have to.
Listen. What if I said I didn't want to have the Jewish people in the company? Would that be anti-Semitic? It would sound like it, right? You'd say I'm from 1930s, right?
Yeah.
But for me as a tribe to say, no, I want an all Black company, right?
I'm generally against that kind of thing, but first of all, you have the right to do whatever the hell you want. This is America.
Well, what I'm saying is that's what I feel may need to happen for my people to have power again, because when my people have been left under the media's control, we've been made sick. We've been allowed to be sick. We're promoting sickness.
So I wanted to get into that. I think when we look at that there, there's something in that, right? If you hear that, there's something in that where you're like, it makes sense. You know, it's like the way he's going about it is so stupid, so bad. But at the same time, and I like Kanye's music, but he is kind of a genius. And he is a little bit, you have to, it's like, you don't get there, right? You don't get there. I've seen his shows, I've seen a couple of his shows. They're weird, but there's something in them that's like, damn. And so when it comes to that, it's like, maybe he did have to like stretch it out so far and then make an all Black company. I think you should make an all Black company. And I think he's right about the way the Black community's portrayed, the way that, like, that stat by itself, right? Like 72% of mothers are single mothers in the Black community. That's up. That's up. You know? And if you contrast like hip hop with like country music, yeah, you get like beer and trucks and bitches and country music in its own way, right? The same way you get like, and guns too. And you get, but you also get it balanced out with like, you know, I fell in love with you when we had babies and it was great. Like you get that kind of shit, right? And you don't get that in the black. And there's something about that cultural manifestation, right? Not that it's like it shouldn't exist. It's good shit. It's fun to listen to, you know? I like A$AP Ferg as much as the next motherfucker. But like, it seems like that's missing in the black community in a certain way. And I think Kanye's calling that out, but he's doing it in a way that is so frustrating to listen to. The way he's looking at the way the CIA the black community in the Reagan years. I mean, the way the FBI killed Martin Luther King. Like, this is up. The leaders in these communities that were bringing, it's like there was a calculated effort to make sure that the black community wasn't healthy. And he's pissed. And he's like, yeah, maybe I should make an all black company. And he's like, well, and even Lex is like that. But it's like, how many companies are like mostly Jewish? You know what I mean? How many companies or the heads of companies are mostly Jewish, if not all Jewish? And how many companies are in the same vein, but all black or mostly black? I think what he wants is the black community to take on, like he was talking about the secrets and the business, the way business works. I think he wants the black community to take on that, like, we protect our own, finally. We protect our own the same way the Jewish community does. I think that's what he's trying to get at. And I've heard him say that in a few ways. And I think that at the end of the day, would be good for the black community. You know, as somebody who's not black and not Jewish, I think generally speaking, white folks don't really have to look out for one another in that way unless they're living in poverty, and then they kind of do. That's why you get that kind of like you're kind of white trash, white racism type of shit that you see most of that where that manifests. In prisons, a lot of times that's the case too. It's like the intensity of the situation promotes tribalism. When I look at it, I think, man, I kind of feel kind of bad for the guy, but then at the same time, it's like, can we just have again? And I'm gonna say this. I'll say this for almost everyone, whether or not I agree with them or not. Let's have the conversation. Let's hear the person out, whether that's Greta Thunberg or Glenn Greenwald or Alex Jones or Kanye West or Lizzo or Kim Kardashian or Edward Snowden. Like these people who, it's like there's so much noise around them. You can't even, like, what does this person have to say and why? And can we get to something there? Can we have a productive conversation? Can we take this leader in the black community and be like, hey man, like the way you're going about this is kind of I get where your frustration's coming from. Let's have the conversation. But no, everybody's going to call him names and it's going to be, is what it is. And yeah, clearly he needs a little bit of help, but what do you do? It's at 1.8 million, probably 2 million. Let's refresh this and see where we're at now. Yeah. Over 2 million views so far. We'll see. I want to share with you what it takes to create this kind of content. I have to sift through piles and piles of bullshit from political ideologues that are completely ridiculous and try and find the truth. I've got to go from the left to the right to the center, all over the place. It's exhausting. I'm losing my fucking mind. But one thing you can do to help me out and help my mental health is subscribe to this channel. Turn on post notifications, like this video, leave a comment, just something, please. I'm losing my shit and you're the only one that can help me. Subscribe to the channel.